Hello and welcome to the Hellraiser blog. If you enjoyed today's Hellraiser blog, please hit the like and subscribe button. Going to talk today about a fight watched last night between Joseph Parker and Fabio Wardley. Took place in London. I didn't go to the fight. I watched it on DAZN. I thought it was a brilliant, brilliant fight. And Fabio Wardley, I think people now need to really stand up and take notice of him, because he's sort of always seemed to be, oh yeah, he is a nice guy. His first ever fight was on one of my shows. He's definitely a really good guy. Very nice way about him. That's what I would say. Just a really good energy to him, and a nice guy. And listen, last night he really showed the heart of a lion. He really, really did himself proud, and he put it all on the line. And that's what people that I think that buy tickets and that watch boxing on TV, what they want to see. They want to see guys putting it all, out there. And Fabio did that. And he, for me, he showed himself to be everything that he can be, and that was brilliant. And at the end of the fight, he sort of collapsed, almost exhausted. And I think it was as much physically exhausted and mentally exhausted in equal measure. He he really put himself in a positive light, and whatever he gets from now, I mean, I think he'll get an Usyk fight now. Honestly, I do, because I don't think the promoters probably expected him to reach that level, but he's on a run of wins. He's just stopped Joe Parker. Surely that is the next fight. That's a huge money fight for him. That would be a massive fight, and he deserves it. Frankly, you couldn't begrudge him that. I thought, look, Joseph Parker I've known for a long while. Was looked after by a guy called Stewie Duncan, who was a big mate of mine. He was an Australian manager and matchmaker, and he died of cancer, unfortunately. But he was a big buddy of mine, and he used to talk to me about Joseph Parker from very early on. And he'd rant and rave about him, about how wonderful he was. But I say, but Stewie, every time they've tried to step him up, he's got 3 losses, and every time they try to step him up, he loses, and he seems to lose fights that he probably could win. So that's a mental block. That's something going on up here that's stopping him from performing. And I mean, against Dillian White, he literally proved to everyone, including himself, that he could win that fight, but he left it until way too late. But he was so apprehensive and, underperforming early on that he robbed himself of victory. Anyway, I thought he's over that. He then went on a run of good wins, great results, and I thought, okay, so now he's overcome, the problems that he's had psychologically stopping performing. But he looked to me yesterday like a guy who couldn't get up for the fight. When it's like he just thought he had to turn up, go through the motions, and he'll walk off with a big paycheck and a win, and then he can go and fight Usyk or whoever's next. But Wardley completely derailed that, and you have to tip your hat to Wardley for doing that. It's not an easy thing to do. Look, Wardley really, really dug deep, and I think anyone that loves boxing, you see someone that performed how Wardley did last night, you can only love the guy. You can only become a fan. That's exactly what we all aspire to in boxing, to hope to be able to do that. And he was losing a fight. He was getting the worst of it. It didn't dampen his enthusiasm for a second. He just soldiered on. And at times in the fight, I felt quite sorry for him. He was getting caught with right hand after right hand after right hand. And okay, so technically there's some improvements that he can make and some adjustments that he needs to. But look, for one, it told us, right, he's got a huge capacity to absorb punishment and just walk through it, because he took clean right hands, successive right hands. And it's probably as sickening for Joe Parker as it was damaging to Wardley, because to hit someone with that many clean shots, and if you look at Wardley, his neck is like most people's waist probably. he just kept trundling forwards, and he was taking those shots, and I thought it would be one of those where, you know, you take it, you take it, you take it, you take it, but you can't take it indefinitely. There comes a point where you know, there's like one drop causes the vase to overflow, the straw that breaks the camel's back. They just get to a point where it's too much and he'll break down. He sort of broke down right at the end of the fight. He looked like he was as exhausted psychologically as he was physically. But the point is, look, Wardley, despite massive adversity, I mean, they would have been painful, those shots. It's impossible for him to go through that without suffering severe discomfort. But I loved his hunger. I loved his hunger for the fight. I loved the way he applied himself. He didn't slow. It didn't put a dent in his enthusiasm. He didn't take a step back. He didn't look for excuses. He just soldiered on, soldiered on, soldiered on. I think in his head he must have been telling himself, this guy's going to crack, he's going to crack. And I honestly thought that Parker, he did start moving. After about 3 or 4 rounds, he started using some lateral movement and feinting with the jab and creating space for himself. And I thought, okay, well, now he's just going to coast through this. A lesser fighter than Wardley, that's what would have happened. But Wardley would not allow that. Wardley just, regardless of what was coming his way, he just soldiered in. He closed down the distance. He walked Parker to the ropes and kept him there. And people that were saying, oh, that's a premature stoppage, I do understand that. I didn't think it was premature. I thought Parker looked like he'd run his race at that point. He wasn't throwing back enough punches. And got to remember that people can be seriously injured in boxing, and Parker was not throwing back enough punches to Wardley. Wardley was just working him over. It's strange because not that long before that, it looked like Parker was walking through Wardley and working him over. So for Fabio Wardley to have stuck through what came at him and then turn the fight back around through sheer grit. I keep going on about it, but listen, you've done to be dragged into that deep, dark place, lonely place where you're getting battered from all angles with big shots, and just through pure grit and determination to soldier and to force your way through it, and then come back with more. And I think that broke Parker's heart. And people saying it was a premature stoppage, I would say, well, if you're not throwing punches back, you're the away fighter. You know, he was in London. You're not throwing punches back, and you're sitting on the ropes. And also, it's dangerous. You know, look, these are heavyweights. They're big guys, and big clean shots were hitting him. I know he didn't wobble too much. There was a couple of stumbles towards the end, but you can't let a guy just keep taking clean shots on the head like that if he's not throwing back. Because if he's getting hit with those big shots, but he's throwing back, then you can say, okay, well, he's still in the fight. He's got a chance of turning this round because they're big guys. One punch can do that. But he wasn't throwing enough back. He was getting pinged all over the place, and he looked like he'd run his race. His work rate, if you count the amount of punches in that final round, right down, completely fizzled out. So actually, I think the referee did it right. We don't want guys getting stretchered out, getting badly hurt. For anyone that wanted that fight to go on for longer, I think you've got to really look at the history of fighters in 12 rounds fights, and that's when the damage is done. When they've ran their race, they've shot their bolt, they're not throwing back. These are all the signs we look for. We know if you're a boxing referee or high level official, you know that's when the fight's sort of drawing to a conclusion. And Parker would run his race, and Wardley deserves all the flowers he gets for what he did. I mean, I can't speak highly enough of the effort, of the sheer effort. I'm not saying necessarily the technical boxing side. I mean, you can't say it wasn't clever what he was doing, because it worked in face of a good champion. But the grit he showed was superhuman. Anyway, if you enjoyed the blog, please hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you again soon on the Hellraiser blog. Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.